First item on the agenda is the discussion with the Maryland Department of the Environment on circuit rider programs, and we do have with us the Undersecretary of Maryland Department of the Environment, Suzanne Dorsey. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right here is fine. That's,
All by yourself.
thank you for taking the time to come down,
Thank you for the privilege of being here.
and we will we'll give you the floor.
All right.
Do you have a handout here? Or?
I do. I'm just going to let you hold on to it because I don't want to confuse two things. And one is the suite of options that are longer-term options with the contract that I'm going to wave in front of you that is available for the circuit rider, right? Those are two separate things. And so, Laura, if you'll hold on to those for just a second. Again, it's an honor and privilege to be on the Eastern Shore and specifically in Wicomico County. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm here today because the residents of Wicomico County need quality and timely septic permitting delivered with excellent customer service. That's why I'm here. I want you to know that MDE provides the delegated authority. We do not have control of the salaries. We did support the salary review and the increase, and we continue to do that with our sister agencies, the Maryland Department of the Health. Y'all have talked about this going on for a long time, and I'm just going to go back to 2015. I wasn't here in 2015, but staff in 2015 received concerns about septic permitting and began to review permitting in Wicomico County, and they found a high number of permits to be deficient. We responded by having MDE staff on site in the Department of Health, local Department of Health, for retraining. We had staff here from October 2018 to October 2019, so a full year of retraining. By 2020, we were again receiving concerns and complaints about premature septic failures. So again, MDE staff came and did some additional training from May through December of 2021. So, and as you mentioned, Secretary Grumbles came in 2019, and I will be here whenever you call me. I want to get this done for y'all and for your residents. We've been at the meetings, and more recently, Senior Local Advisor Les Knapp has been very involved, and so we've really accelerated his involvement. I also want to assure you and the citizens that we're talking about Wicomico daily and weekly in Baltimore. This issue crosses the secretaries, the Secretary of Health, Secretary of the Environment, up to the governor's office. It is a huge concern. I also want to admit that I'm not a lifetime state government employee. I ran a nonprofit for years, so I am impatient with how long things take at the state and the local level. So forgive me if I lose my patience a little bit when I hear can't. I'm not letting that stop us at the state level. It is not acceptable to me that anything hold this up. Your citizens need relief right now. Lori Brewster needs relief right now. So there was a consensus at the recent meetings that we need to move forward with the circuit rider. There was consensus that based on how the local government works, that that contract should be signed by your health officer. We had negotiated with the Maryland Environmental Services training opportunities for them so they could become those circuit riders. We have delivered that training to Maryland Environmental Service. The MES will contract with the county or as you directed, to the local health department directly, and they put forward a set of principles that could be incorporated into a contract. I think it's really important that we not get wrapped around the axle with the set of factors in the contract, and I have permission to waive this. MES is finalizing their attorney review. It will be delivered this week to everybody sitting here, including Lori Brewster, but this is the scope of work, this paragraph right here. It is not highly prescriptive because we need to get in, MDE needs to get in. You don't have a lot of staff. We need to make sure that you have the services both in the office, getting rid of the backlog, and in the field, responding to the devastating story of a family with sewage in their backyard. That is not acceptable, and I'll make sure that one of my staff is on site as soon as I can possibly get them there. But I'm going to read to you what this scope of work says. It says that specifically, each project or task will support supplying Wicomico County with staffing and technical support for well and septic permitting. The specific service categories include environmental, technical assistance, compliance activities, program support, staffing, engineering services, GIS services, environmental management, planning, monitoring, and other field and non-field efforts. MES understands that Wicomico County has indicated they are experiencing staffing issues, which is resulting in the inability of the county to meet the needs of their delegated authority regarding on-site sewage disposal systems. The Maryland Department of the Environment shall oversee tasks and work completed under this MOU. We're going to take the burden off of your health department and make sure that your citizens get the services that they need and deserve. Exactly how we're going to do that, we're going to move as quickly as we can, work on the backlog, address the failing septic systems in the field, and get things in the office back on track. We're also providing your citizens, you are the first county that we will beta test an online septic permitting portal. For those who wish to use it, we'll have that septic portal available. I'll admit to you right now that I have two purposes: better customer service, but also tracking for you of the turnover time for septic so that we can transparently and publicly transmit to you how long it's taking for a basic standard residential septic permit to go through. That allows all of us to provide feedback to the local health department. So that's the circuit rider, and I know you're going to have specific questions about that, but I think with a sense of urgency, we need to move forward with that circuit rider. There are also longer-term solutions, and that's what I've brought. These have all been discussed at the meetings that we've been to together previously. So for many of you, these won't be new ideas, but it is a set of options that we've transmitted to all the health officers in the state, and we will be transmitting to local governments later this week. And these are options for moving forward for long-term solutions. These have been vetted by both Maryland Department of Health as well as MDE and the governor's office. So we look forward to working with you on these longer-term solutions. But with that, let's get Wicomico residents the services they need as quickly as we possibly can. I can have MES circuit riders if we were to be able to get this contract through, and you need to review it carefully and have your attorneys review it, but I could have MES circuit riders here October 24th, and I look forward to making that a reality.
Suzanne,
Yes, sir.
first of all, thanks a lot for being here with us today. We immensely appreciate it. Quick question regarding the circuit riders. Would they have final authority? And let me sort of tell you the reason of I'm asking that question, because I know in the past we've talked about contractors and so forth, and my understanding has always been, well, they could do that, but then like the NDH or health department would then have to review the contractor work. So then the holdup would then would still happen. So yeah, so I guess in the day, if they quote pass a perk test, is that final authority?
So MES cannot have final signing authority. So depending on what the staffing is at the health department, there may need to be, and again, is not going to be acceptable. We may need to pull the delegation back if there's no staff, or if there is a staff that we can designate locally to be the final sign-off after the review and the assessment by the MES. that's what we'll do. So one of those two outcomes will answer that question.
Thank you.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
So-
that.
so
Because, you know,
final-
people are going to say, we're waiting for the state to say this, we're waiting
Yeah,
for them to say it.
that's-
So what does that mean directly when someone is waiting for an inspection?
So when there's, the data is collected, the inspection is made, the inspection report is included, the file is complete, and you need to be approved or not approved. That final sign-off, that signature that either approves you or doesn't approve you, we will try to retain that at the local health department, that final sign-off. All the work that goes into completing that file, we'll try to do that. If there is no staff in the local health department, if that comes to pass, we'll withdraw the delegation, and MDE staff will have that final sign-off.
Time period?
Well, we hope to get turnaround times back on track to be weeks and not years.
I suppose, thank you. And thank you for stepping up and trying to help out with this critical issue. I suppose that the folks you hire, you're going to have a pay scale large enough to bring them on board, right?
Yes, MES has hired, and they have the ability to hire outside of the pay scale, the challenge that you're facing right now.
So why couldn't we have just done that with the health department and brought people off, that we could have hired? Why couldn't MDE or, done that?
I share your frustration. MDE advocated, the employees of the local health department roll up to the state health department, not the Maryland Department of the Environment. There was an annual salary review that was submitted. We supported that as vigorously as we could up to the level of the secretary, and we were not successful in receiving that.
Ms. Brewster and the council, we've all been fighting this for a long time, and like I say, again, thank you for stepping up. But it just kind of seems kind of strange that, okay, we can't hire people because we can't pay them enough, but you can. So.
MES doesn't work for MDE either, so I can't hire people either, but MES is the circuit rider. That is the solution that we can get in place very quickly.
I guess the other question would be qualifications. What's going to be the qualification level? How are these people going to be trained, or are they already trained? Do they know the difference in soils here, but compared to Garrett County or St. Mary's County? I mean.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Yes. So we will have different levels of expertise. They will charge different hourly rates, and what we'll try to do is be effective stewards of Wicomico County taxpayer money. So we don't want to throw a licensed engineer at a problem that doesn't need that. If the environmental health specialists hired by MES can do those services, we'll let them do those services. We also have clerical staff that's available through this contract, because we have been hearing about the clerical needs.
Yeah.
So again, the MDE staff will support, come up with a plan to address what we've heard is a priority, which is backlog, but also address in the field concerns that people have with failing septics. We'll work on business processes so that we can build in efficiencies. We'll use new tools like the online portal, and we'll hopefully, after a year, leave you in a much better place, ideally with a salary increase, or should you choose one of the other options that we've talked about for a long-term solution, we can facilitate those changes.
As far as new septics, new perks, new septics, will these folks have the ability to design these systems like we've had before?
So designing a septic, there's an inherent conflict of interest. If you design and then approve a septic, now you're liable should you have a bad design, you are now liable for that design.
And we had a gentleman in front of us, I think his name was Dan, he said they're not liable. He said.
So according to the attorneys that work from MDE and for the health department, and we do a lot of permitting beyond well and septics, you do not design and then approve a design. You have, and really, that increases the business opportunity for the well and septic community in the county. We want them to design, and the health department or the county staff approves or disapproves that design.
Lori's sitting here. Did we ever, I thought the health department did the designs.
All across the state, the health department used to do the designs. We had.
Can you come up so people can hear? I'm sorry. Sorry to drag you up here. I know you thought you were done, you were going to retire, and you don't have to listen to us anymore.
But she came back.
Well, I'm not done until the end of the year, so, yes, I think Deputy Secretary Dorsey can attest to the fact that all health departments were given a memo advising that we were no longer to design, and that was occurring in many jurisdictions across the state. We got that in September, I believe.
We've been discussing the fact that it is not acceptable to design
so
and approve it for a long time.
The next question, who do we have to design these systems in the county? Who's qualified?
Many of your installers are qualified to do this.
So we're going to, and this is something I think a lot of people, and somebody mentioned it, I think Mrs. Sterling mentioned it today, that we should listen to what some of the installers say as far as how a septic works and can it be put in. So does this mean we're going to be relying on the installers now to design a system?
So the installers have to have a level of training and certification such that they should be able to do that. And again, we don't have a perfect system. Not every installer is perfect. But the idea is they put forward the design. It follows the law. It follows physics associated with performance of a septic system, and then the local health department approves or disapproves that based on the science and the law that's associated with it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So you're saying that, like the lady in the back, her septic is failing. So if one of the local installers go out there and say, she just need a drain field, she don't need a mound system,
They bring that to the health department, and we agree or disagree based on the law and the science.
so you're going back to the law and sciences again, but you're saying they don't really have the final say, the installer.
So the installer brings forward a design, a repair, and the job of the permit writers and the approvers is to evaluate that relative to the problem and to provide the oversight that you want that's protective of the citizens, both the property owner, because what we don't want is a solution that won't work. So we want a solution that is acceptable, that achieves the needs of that resident, is also protective of the neighbors and of the next property owner. So we want the right solution to the right problem. It starts with the installers, and it is approved or disapproved by the local health department.
Okay. I keep hearing you saying county employees and state employees. These people that's going to be hired, are they?
That is.
What are they?
They work for the Maryland Environmental Service, so that is a quasi-governmental agency
Right.
that we use in situations like this where we need to provide immediate technical services to local governments.
So where's the funding going to come to pay for these people?
So the funding, as we discussed at some of our earlier meetings, it comes from the county.
Who's we discussed this earlier?
So-
This is the first
so-
time we've heard of this.
So let me rephrase. So the funding, in order for this to move forward quickly, the funding comes from your county. As I understand it, the desire is the effective way is to move it through the health department. Lori Brewster has put a not-to-exceed number out there of $50,000. We, MES and MDE, will work with whatever number that you provide. Again, that's your decision, your assessment about what number you can and want to put towards this.
So we know we got a lot of failing septics out there. And if we're not that crazy to say, oh, we're going to put up $50,000. $50,000 is not going to solve the problem. So we're still looking at a lot of money.
I think at this point, you need to get started, right?
We know that, but we need to know
so-
a dollar number because
so-
not only
so-
do people out here want this stuff done, but as Mr. Shanti said, these are taxpayer dollars.
Yes, sir.
We need to know what the dollar amount is going to be and what we're going to start with.
So you can define what that dollar amount is, and we will provide to you the plan. You will be able to come out of a contract at any time. The intent is that MDE works with the local health department and your designee, be it the county executive or anybody else, to determine what it is that you need. You need, as I hear, that backlog addressed and failing septics addressed. We are here to respond to that need as you define it as quickly and effectively as we can.
You understand it? So there's no state money that's going to come involved in this?
There, from the Maryland Department of the Environment, there is no funding. We cannot, for instance, charge your residents a permit fee to be able to do that work.
How many circuit riders are we talking about? How many would be administrative? How many would be engineers in the field?
Again, what I don't want to do is write a contract that is so restrictive, but we have one engineer at the highest level, an environmental health specialist, and a lower level engineer and a clerical worker. Whatever we can do to keep the costs down,
So it'd be one in the office and two in the field?
if necessary.
Okay, and now we do recognize that there's some vacancy funding in reserves, Mrs. Brewster, right?
Correct.
That will help address these costs.
And that's where I came up with the ceiling of the 50,000. It's money that is in our budget from the county that is not being spent at this time due to vacancies. So I wasn't at a point to come to the council to ask for additional dollars to fund this.
We have a $70,000 authorization, Mrs. Hurley, more recently.
We did in the fiscal year '23 budget. We put some money in contingency to increase the salaries of the environmental health specialists.
For the same position.
Was that in addition to the 50,000? That's in vacancies right now.
Yeah, the 50's coming from your already existing
Right.
budget. 70 is
We
a
have the
different.
Different.
The 70 came from the county.
Right, that's a
Okay,
different.
So we have that.
That's not in my budget.
Right.
No.
Right, so we do have that in line. I'm curious, I mean, so many people say, why is the county paying for this? Because these are state employees, and this is actually, the state has created this problem, not the county. But I recognize the fact that no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how you want to point the fingers, I'm not interested in that. We need to get this resolved and get it back on track right away. So keeping in mind of the 70 and the 50, similar to what Vice President Davis suggested, we know it's probably going to be more than that. Is there any idea, because we have to sign a contract, so we know how many people, do we have any idea how far this fiscal note will go beyond there, let's say just for 1 year?
Our intent is 1 year. The contract will be, again, you can set the parameters. We suggest you leave it for 1 year with an opportunity to renew. I hope that's not necessary. I hope that within 1 year that we can get the salary increases that employees deserve, and in addition, or alternatively, pursue another option as outlined on the paper that I passed around.
You mentioned backlog. What's the current backlog that exists? And with these three individuals, how much time is going to be directed towards the backlog, and how much is going to be spent towards what we really want to get is the consistently ongoing permitting?
So as of this morning, we have 41 septic permits backlogged and 81 land evaluations backlogged. And again, the land evaluations, many of them are backlogged due to having to wait for wet season testing, which, as I said earlier, we have not had a wet season, and hopefully we will have one this coming year. As far as how far along that will take, the contract will take us, I have not seen the contract yet, and I think that Deputy Secretary has advised that.
So what we will do is try to efficiently move through. If you've got 41 backlog, I'm making this number up, I haven't seen them, some percentage of them will be easy, right? Some will be hard. Let's get the easy ones out as quickly as possible.
Levels like locates and things.
Exactly.
Like
So that will be our approach, same with the land evaluations. Let's get the easy ones out. If MDE staff needs to come in and support with the more difficult ones, we will do that. We've been here. We plan on continuing to be here. So the state is contributing significant time and resources of its regional staff. And so we commit to continuing to do that until, we move to the next step.
It's been suggested that the contract's been in Wicomico County for 60 days. Not so sure whether that's the situation or not. It appears to me it's still fresh off the...
A month ago, we authorized MES to approach the local health department with beginning the review of the contract. Since that didn't move very quickly, I apologize, I'm impatient. We took it over and made sure that you had a contract that you could review in front of you. Again, this will be, to your attorney to review, to alter, but, we wanted to make sure that this got done.
And that will include, because any contract involves funding. So do we have any idea in that contract exactly what additional commitment Wicomico County will have to make?
So again, that's sort of a blank line in this contract for you to fill in. We had a placeholder of 50,000. That's what we've heard. Should this council decide that you want to alter that and increase that, we'll provide whatever services you need.
But we need a
Well, I
little bit
guess-
of help. We need to know what the 3 initial people is going to
Well,
cost.
I was going to say, yeah, I guess that's the question, what would it cost?
Right.
If we have
So-
the engineer, I guess we'll call it assistant
Right.
engineer and a clerical person.
So the back of the envelope calculation that I've done is if you take the highest paid engineer and you give $50,000 towards that person, it's about 400 hours of their time. So I think, it may not solve the problem, but I think we can move along. And again, I think we can do less than that. If you wanted to start with 50 and then have a renewal option, again, we'll work with whatever parameters you want to assign to this, but we just want to move forward.
Having not seen the contract, would it give us the option or availability to change this as we go along? If we find ourselves 3 or 4 months down the road
course.
that, okay, the 50's not enough.
Of course.
Yeah, we could then
Yes.
step up to, good.
Mrs. Hurley, Deputy Secretary Dorsey had made the comment, and I appreciated it, that October 24th was when she wanted to get this done. Legislative processes, is this a measure whereas the county executive, the acting county executive could sign off on this contract? Does it have to come back to the council in order to approve it?
I would think, I'd have to talk to Pam, who's our finance director, to see if we need to take the money out of contingency or if it's already embedded in the health department's budget. So it may need to come back if it's still in that contingency for council to approve the funding.
Or perhaps we could start a contract that was only for 2 weeks, giving the council, which you could do with existing funds. You wouldn't have the council to have to authorize transfers. So we could do a 2-week contract, and that would give the council time to meet again. And by that time, then we could pass a full-blown measure as to maybe a year contract.
From the state perspective, I'll work really hard to make that happen, should that be your desire.
That could possibly work. I guess it's up to the council to have some type of consensus as whether or not having seen the contract, but whether we are in favor of trying to make this happen and leaving it up to the discretion of the county executive to move forward. And then in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then we would more formally agree to extending the contract or changing the contract.
I think we are in favor, but I personally would like to see the contract, and maybe the short-term proposal that you suggested would work. And I do want to express this. I want to thank you for being here. A lot of people tell us what we want to hear, but I do feel that you're sincere, and we do want to get this problem taken care of, so thank you.
We're okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Yeah, can I go ahead? Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit. I don't want to leave the circuit rider thing unless we're
Let
done
Mrs.
with
Hurley,
that.
'cause-
I just have one quick question. Is it 3 employees or 4? Because I wrote down the environmental health specialist as being someone separate from the engineer.
1 and 3.
Right now, if I recollect, I think there's 3 MES, and again, that could change. What I would like to do from MDE's standpoint, again, let's not be so prescriptive. Let's put the right solution to the problem, and that could change over time.
Understood.
So we have the right technical people available to us. We intend, you will be invoiced, and you can turn this off if we're not doing a good job, if we're not collaborating effectively. You can terminate without cause. But our intent is to be collaborative, to assess the problem, and put the right people to the need at the time of that need.
So with the time frame in mind, I would suggest maybe the first contract. I can't imagine between the 50 and the 70 we'd be going anywhere near out of budget, or at least preliminarily, if that were to last us until the second meeting in November, when a formal proposal could be brought to the council on the 15th. But we could already get it in place tomorrow if we had to
Right.
be. But then any extension or changes would be on the calendar of the 15th. Bill, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And you mentioned early on that, we're looking for long-term solutions
Yes, sir.
as well as short-term, and the circuit rider issue we just discussed is a short-term. On a longer term, I just want to plant this seed because I've been a proponent of this for a long time, and the situation we find ourselves in time and time again in Wicomico, and property owners can attest to this. And Mr. Payne, your example, I think it's a little bit of a poster child of this. We get these just borderline gray scenarios. I don't know how many times people, when they have their perk test done and so forth, they're getting 3 tests done, and it almost depends on what day do they come out there and read that flow. I mean, we're always just right on the border.
And what person happens to show up?
Yeah, who shows up when, but I mean, timing can be a big issue and so forth. Anything we can do to create more flexibility into the system. And here's the example that I always go back to all the time. To me, it's very different. We have the landowner, we have the farmer. It's got 100 acres. You got one house on that property. He's got a failing system. They got 100 acres to work with. Whatever system they put is going to be better than their failing system. And so it's going to be an improvement. But their situation is much different than the person who lives in a subdivision that has 1/4 acre. However, those flow rates and everything they're doing, it's the same thing. And with today's science and technology, that person with 100 acres, they got a lot more flexibility in terms of, area and so forth to make something work. However, they've got to abide by that same restrictions that the person in their subdivision with a 1/4 acre. So to me, those are very different scenario, but I still, you're right, from a public health standpoint, you're right, we always got to protect our groundwater, and as we should be. But I think the science and so forth exists where that person with that space, in the agricultural, that farmer compared to the typical subdivision person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. And again, I think, our job is, again, use science, follow the law. But innovation is really important. And we are working with new septic systems to qualify for, use in the state. We do welcome that. Again, our job at Maryland Department of the Environment is to make sure that those systems will work not just for a year or two, but for the lifetime, the expected lifetime of that. And we also need to make sure that you have staff out there to inspect those and to make sure that your citizens are protected. So it's a balance. We want to make sure that we get solutions installed that are right, that, the subjectivity about is it or does not perk, that needs to be reduced. I think with additional training, we can reduce that subjectivity. But the bottom line is we need solutions for your residents. In every case, it may not be a septic, and that goes back to the rigorous discussion you had about planning. And that is really your challenging job of planning.
And we're working on that.
And if I could just talk, those plans, they will be expensive, and there will need to be some local government input. But I saw the first tranche of federal infrastructure money go out last month, and it went to counties that had a plan.
You have to have a plan to be,
Yes,
to get the
sir.
money.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
No
So-
plan, no money.
Millions of dollars. We have a state revolving fund that especially is designed to support wastewater treatment plants and water supply. You can take advantage of that state revolving fund. It can be loan, and in some cases, depending on the income, medium income level, it can be grant funding. So we have technical assistance available for you. We want to support you and your residents as much as we can.
Can that grant funding be used towards our implementation of the water and sewer plan?
Yes, sir. That is exactly what it's designed to do.
Joe?
Okay, a little bit off of what Bill said. So the latest experience I had here a few weeks ago was a homeowner. I have the opportunity to go to people's homes sometimes before they sell them. They had a septic inspection done, then privately. Okay, it was sent by the lender. The lender demanded it, which they usually do. They said that it wouldn't pass. Okay, works fine. Couple said, hey, our septic works fine. The lender's home inspector, or the purchaser's home inspector, whoever hired him, said it doesn't work. It doesn't have the flow, I think the word was. So they hired their own home inspector. They came in and said it's fine. Who gives those people guidance on what should pass and what shouldn't? I think people get caught up because I've heard this before. Who gives those people there's got to be some guidance that they're following. Does the
Yeah.
state, is there a state
There's a
guidelines?
board, it's run by the health department.
State Health Department,
Yes, sir.
okay.
I'm glad, Bill, you sort of went on this side track here, because this is, I keep forgetting how really important this is. And I try not to be cynical, but, over the last few years, it really has, we've all been given the impression that, from this perspective, that mounds and holding tanks, that's all you have to do. I've really been cynical enough to think that, well, maybe because we don't have the staff, maybe because there's not enough people, maybe because nobody wants to really care enough, that why bother about perk testing? Why go to all the time and worry about everything? Just put a holding tank in, or just put a mound system in. Let's get the heck out of here. And I don't know, I think it's possibly a lack of service. I could be 100% wrong, and that could be the only solution. But I would hope that maybe we might be able to look at some other options, some more creative ways to do it besides holding tanks and besides mound systems, because that equally destroys a property value. Joe and I will tell you that. We were in outskirts of Del Mar, and some individuals here recognize the fact a mound system in your front yard is not the best way for property values to sustain. So we feel it's important. I know that some installers say, look, rip out the old drain field, put in a new drain field. And these are the installers that I think maybe you have the hands-on, experience. And you could say that's completely ludicrous, but that's what's suggested. Rip out the old drain field, put a whole new drain field in, but at least you're not putting a mound, at least you're not putting a holding tank, and it's an option. So I'd want to be objective about all that.
Yeah, and listen, when you get to those challenging situations and, your local health department may not have within their agency the ability to say, is there something else we can do? We encourage you to bring that up to MDE. Don't beat us over the head and say, we've sent this to MDE and they won't approve it. But we will send experienced staff to see if there's any solutions. We will work very hard to find solutions. They're not always the solution that the homeowner wants. We do have to be protective of our environment. Alan Gerard will beat me up if I don't. But we do work to balance the needs of that residence and recognize the economic, burden that comes in these scenarios where their system is failing and the easy solution isn't going to work. We need to have that next level of innovation. We will continue to work with new ideas, new septic installers, new solutions, and we have to be protective of our natural resources and the public health.
And I know we've got to wrap up, but
Yeah,
I do want to feed off one thing John just said about going back into the existing drain field. I'll just share this. In Virginia, you can do a one-time, they call it a one-time repair, but they allow you to go back into and replace the existing drain field
Right.
one time.
Problem
But,
solved.
yeah, it's a problem, yeah.
Well, and it is, depending on if that drain field is functioning, right? We could set a rule like that, but if the drain field isn't functioning and you end up with raw sewage on the surface, we haven't solved anybody's problem. In fact,
have to
we've made
redo
it worse.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
They redo it. I mean, they put in new drain lines and everything.
Right.
Talking about water tables.
I'm talking about water tables, I'm talking about, a number of different
I'm
things.
just mentioning that as
Right.
maybe another tool,
Real quick
as I
one.
mentioned,
Right.
a tool in the toolbox.
I've asked Laurie this, Mrs. Brewster this several times. Has there been any further movement on gray water and black water as far as the separation? And that would take some of the
Yeah.
stress off of a regular
Sure.
septic system.
There are some new regulations that have passed. I will tell you, sir, they don't go far enough, but they are, for a water-rich state like Maryland, they are a step in the right direction in terms of gray water use. And I'd be happy to share those regulations with you.
Could you send those to us?
Yes, sir.
I
I'd be
appreciate it.
happy.
Thank you.
Right, well, listen, we're going to wrap up. We appreciate the audience participation and the public comments and your patience with us for sitting through this work session. I think it was very productive. Deputy Secretary Dorsey, as always, we really appreciate you taking the time and your sincere concern to address Wicomico County's health issues, and as well as you with Officer Brewster. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We certainly look forward to working with you again within the next week to finalize these measures.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
15 minutes for lunch.
15?
Yeah, we're going to take about 15 minutes for lunch, if you don't mind, and then we'll come back with an open work session. We have a quarterly session with the Board of Education.
So moved. You're dedicated.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Reconvenes the legislative session 2022-22 for October 18th, 2022, the Wicomico County Council. Next item on the agenda is our open work session with the Board of Education. Glad to have you all here. Come on up. How's everyone?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, doing great, thanks.
Here it comes.
We draw a crowd, don't we? They're packing the house.
Still a half hour ago, I don't know
Hey,
what happened.
we could carry it back over to Long Avenue.
Then you would get a crowd.
We're working through lunch, Gene.
Just
We're working instead of lunch.
next time, bring beer. Oh, we're live?
Was he live?
I heard that. I'm not worried about that.
Hey, we're human.
They know
That's
G.
what I'm here for.
Yeah, blame it on me.
All right. Well, look, great to see you. If you could introduce yourselves from my left to right so that the audience at home knows who you are and your position. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kim Miles, Assistant Superintendent with Student and Family Services, Wicomico County Public Schools.
Can't hear you. Can you bring the mic closer to you?
Sorry, it's not the greatest system here.
Yeah, that thing's hard to move. But
I take it as a compliment. I'm not often told that I'm too quiet, so thank you.
you are quiet. That's okay.
Kim Miles, I'm Assistant Superintendent with Student and Family Services, Wicomico County Public Schools.
Brian Rager, Assistant Superintendent, Chief Finance and Operating Officer.
Good afternoon, Mike Estolfer, Superintendent of Schools.
Gene Malone, Chairman of the Board of Wicomico County Board of Education.
Thank you. Pleasure to have you here. And we do have your agenda in front of us and appreciate it. Dr. Stauffer, whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. I also want to recognize that we have our Comptroller, Jesse Reed, in the audience.
If he wants to pull a chair up, he certainly may.
He stays back there.
On the agenda, the first three items are items that the council asked for and requested that we include on the agenda. So I will briefly give a summary of our grant writer, or what we call grant specialist position for the Board of Education, and then certainly would be interested if you have any questions regarding that position. But the grant specialist position has been for us in the Board of Education about 15 years. Our grant specialist that we currently have now has been there about 12 years. She previously worked in a department, in a finance-related department for Wicomico County Public Schools, and she has an associate's art degree in finance, business administration, in those areas, and she's done a number of trainings, Microsoft Word, and she basically is a coordinator in a sense, where she works with department heads regarding grants specifically, and works with those. She is the point person for all grants coming into the Board of Education. She advertises those, makes sure that they get out to the department heads themselves, and then she coordinates meetings with those department heads and works with them to fill in the information for the grant, and then also helps a lot in the areas of submitting that grant and then following up with the grant provider themselves.
Does she also administer the grants?
So as far as administering the grants, she would be the coordinator for that, but the department heads themselves are the ones that maintain those funds, and then also work to provide any data or information back to the grant provider.
I have a grant administrator that oversees all the grants that goes out. We were explained to by our finance director last meeting, I think, that you had to have a grant administrator and a grant writer.
Right.
You know, and
It almost sounds like that's what this person actually is.
the grant administrator.
The term here says grant writer, but they're
Right.
really the one that's coordinating it with the department heads.
but she writes the grants too, right?
Right.
She does.
Yeah.
She coordinates the writing and the filling in of those grants, but a lot of the department heads themselves, depending on what the grant's for, they do a lot of the body of the grant.
So she's the point person.
She's the point person, the specialist, and that would probably be more closely related to what you were talking about as an
So it
administrator.
was basically my question, because we had a heavy discussion on it at the first meeting of the month, and I always brag on her being a former board member, and talk about how she would always come to the board meeting and give an update on all the grants that were written and an update on all the grants received. And there's always been discussion that the county probably should get a grants writer. And then the discussion came up, the difference in a grants writer and a grants administrator. And then one person said that the grant person should be in the Department of Finance, and then another one said it should be a different position. So we're kind of getting an idea of how the Board of Education does it.
Sure. For us, the grant specialist is actually in the department of the Office of School Improvement. So she works very closely with teachers, school administrators, also central office staff, as well as, like I said, department heads, and is very familiar with the grant providers locally and also at the state level.
Yeah. So the terminology grant specialist seems to go a long way.
Good. It's it's an eye-opener. A lot of help. Any questions and members? Next item you have is the inclement weather process.
Turn this over to Mrs. Miles to take us through that.
Thank you, Dr. Stauffer. So we do have approved by Maryland State Department of Education a 22-23 virtual day instruction plan, and I'll give you a few details as to what's involved in that. This did have to get our board approval. That occurred at our August 9 board meeting, was submitted and approved at the state level just a few days after that. So MSDE provided the opportunity for the use of virtual days with some very specific parameters. We can have up to 8, and they can be used for, and I'm going to read from this sheet so as not to miss anything, areas that could include, but are not limited to, inclement weather days, i.e. snow days, staff professional learning days, high school graduation days, to enable teachers to assist with and to attend the graduations. It's how our plan is written, or other similar circumstances, such as an election day, SAT administration day, when you have a large number coming in, and perhaps not all students in the school by grade level taking part. The specific parameter is that of the 8 days permitted maximum as virtual school days, no more than 3 of those 8 may be used as asynchronous. And asynchronous, I know you've heard that from many other times we've been before you from different persons in different roles, but looking at asynchronous as the time that the student is not engaged with the teacher through the electronic transmission. They're working independent. So at this time, our planning includes, looking at these, a question that has come up with regard to that planning. I'll step back for a second. So what happens, Ms. Miles, when we have a snow day and we have to make an announcement? First of all, it will be communicated to families in advance. We're not looking at a single day weather incident as being the prompt for a virtual day. There is still such a thing as a possible snow day where there is a school cancellation. But if we get a large storm and we know that by road conditions, sidewalk conditions, other conditions, we're not going to be able to transport students to school in the manner that we need to for multiple days, then we would meet, concur on the use of virtual days, and announce to families in advance to let them know that this would be occurring. So that's where we are on the plan at this point. We don't want anyone to think that if it's snowy and it's Tuesday, we're going to come on the air at 5:30 when the news media begin announcing that it's a virtual day. There will be more of a leadway for the families before that. And of course, we're going to encourage, as we always have, our students to take their technology home with them when that's appropriate, so that they are prepared. But we have what has been identified as a well-developed plan, and again, has been approved by our board as well as by Maryland State Department of Education.
And I applaud you for being ready as an educational agency. How about the families? How are they going to all of a sudden say, oh, it's a snow day Wednesday? How are they really effectively going to be prepared for that? Is everything already in place with their computers in the homes and the internet access? And is that already, have we through COVID managed to establish such a program that is still in existence now so that you can cut the light switch on and off and say, go virtual?
We have continued much of what has been put in place for preparation. Part of that is routine, having the students take their technology with them as appropriate at the end of a day so that they're transporting it. As well, we're also very realistic. We know that there are spots across our county that may have difficulties with that access, internet access, and we also have provisions within the plan for attendance, acceptance of work, acceptance of student work for grading at a date after maybe perhaps the date assigned if there is that difficulty with technology. It's not a perfect setup, but we have tried to consider through what we've learned over the past 2 years what is needed to support our families and our students, and we have that in place. Our administrators have messages to share with families just as reminders of what this could look like moving forward. And again, that routine of having your materials. Now, I'm not going to ask any of you to think back, but perhaps when I was in middle school, I might have had a routine and I might have forgotten in a couple days. We're going to work with those families as well. Probably more than a couple days on my part, but I will own that there may be other students who forget on an occasion, and we're going to work with them.
All the computers that were handed out for virtual learning, are they still in possession of those?
Every student still has a computer, and it's not only for virtual learning, it's also a learning tool used in the classrooms.
Well, I remember during the COVID, when that was brought up, I asked, is this going to be the way of the future, buying more laptops for every student? And we were told yes. So are you buying new laptops every year?
There is a process, a timeline process in place for the replacement, just as your home laptop you may need to replace or repair after a period of time.
Right.
There is a pre-established schedule. There is also a response team for repairs that may be needed. And I would hope that we would always look at those as a tool for learning and not the only platform for learning.
So are new freshmen getting a laptop?
All students in the grade levels have the laptops.
Okay. Answered that.
So I think just in summary from Mrs. Miles, just for understanding and general public, if it were to snow, a number of inches or whatever it may be, and schools needed to be canceled, most likely that would still be a snow day, as it has been in the past. We have options from that point. We are allowed through the state to have 3, as Mrs. Miles said, asynchronous days where that day could be made up in a different way prior to the end of the school year. It could be a professional development day that we already have on our calendar, but students could be assigned work to do while they're out of school that day, and then that would be counted as a day of school. Or it could be something where if it snowed, 10 inches and we know we're going to be out of school for several days, and we say, okay, on day 3 or whatever it may be, we'll have a virtual learning day, and we can plan that in advance. And that could also count as a day of school as well. So we do have some flexibility. The state's provided that this year, and we're trying to take advantage of that.
Kids love snow days.
Yeah. No kidding.
They'll still be around.
So Nick, the next item we have, doing a lot of capital improvements. Yeah.
Yes, we are. Dr. Egger's going to take us through some updates on that.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have some exciting things going on in some of our buildings. If you've been around the county, you've seen 2 major projects, one wrapping up and one that's well underway. Wrapping up is Beaver Run Elementary School. It opened to the staff in June and to our students, welcomed all our students in September. Right now, some ongoing work with the site in terms of bus loop and parking. So we're phase 2 site work is done. The bus loop and the canopy is in place out front. There's also some temporary parking, and as we continue through site phase 2 and phase 3, we'll add permanent visitor and staff parking. And finally, phase 4 will be to remove that temporary parking and use that for a PE playground space and have the student parent drop off on the east side of the building completed. So that should all be in place through this school year and into the summer. But the school inside is 100% done, and students are there today in place. Beautiful school. At Mardella, that got underway right at the very end of school last year in June. A lot of work was completed over the summer. If you've been by, you know there used to be a house on the corner of Delmar Road and Sharptown Road. We acquired that property. That's now additional parking. Will eventually be where the buses come into the building for drop-off. You saw, if you've been there, a number of portables out front. We have 2 large multi-classroom portables and a number of the smaller traditional single classroom portables that has much of the instruction now, because the north side of the building, classrooms along the back of the building closer to the athletic fields, that area of the building has been completely demolished, and a lot of work underway now. The concrete has been put in place, and steel is now being erected for the new classrooms. A lot of work out front also with stormwater. I think there's 4 stormwater management ponds. Again, not the traditional open water ponds. You'll see them fill after a rain event, and then they drain after about a day, similar to what you see at Bennett Middle if you've been by there. Front parking lot has been moved closer to the road because what was the parking lot is now home to all those portables, and existing utilities have been rerouted to facilitate the use of those portables. So we have about 85% of the concrete footings done, about 50% of the slabs done. And as I said, steel's going up, and major mechanical equipment is starting to arrive on the site. Certainly concerns with supply chain issues. We're seeing that in every purchase, all the purchases we're making. So we're getting those items on site as we can and storing them on site. There's a new mechanical room that's going to be on the northeast corner of the building, so we're getting that equipment. So that as soon as that's up, we can begin populating that equipment into that new mechanical room.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that if, on the supply side, anything holding you up, or is everything still staying on target with its scheduling?
Timeline is still on, and the major part of the timeline, the big concern is through next summer to have that new north side of the building completed, where we'll have the high school classroom wing under construction now, a cafeteria and fine art rooms. The plan is to have those done by end of summer. And then during the summer, we can actually remove some of the portables out front, as we'll be moving some of the instruction back into the building. Phase 2 next summer, we'll be looking at doing gymnasium and lockers. And phase 3, starting next summer as well, going into the school year, additional classrooms, mostly specials, tech ed, foreign language, business education, as well as the middle school classrooms that will be towards the front of the building on the left as you face it. And then finally, phase 4, taking us into August of 2025, would be the administration, media center, and then that final site work and bus loop.
So I guess the next school on the agenda is Fruitland Primary.
Fruitland Primary had the ed specs approved at the last board meeting, and we have a meeting, I think, tomorrow with our planning construction folks and myself coming back here to meet with folks at the county office to begin looking at that capital improvement plan and how we'll move forward with that.
Looking at your CIP that you sent us, I appreciate that, getting that. And I was literally shocked at, I guess it's Y, is it Y Senior?
12 million.
Over $6 million as far as roof renovations?
Yeah, roofing.
6.7 million?
It's a large building, actually multiple buildings.
Yeah.
And they're all single story, so you have a lot of square footage over multiple buildings. It's a pretty extensive project.
Something I hate to say, but don't you think that maybe we should be, instead of the 6.7, we should be looking at maybe doing more, more heavy renovations or replacements of that, as opposed to investing 6.7 million in the school?
It's a new roof system, so it's a pretty heavy renovation, and along with that, we're able to use a lot of the CARES funding to take care of the HVAC at the same time.
And the HVAC's included in the 6.7?
No, that's a separate.
That's a little different, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
that's
it'll be-
CARES funding.
That's another,
Mrs. Ashby, Mrs. Campbell are doing a great job of kind of threading money together, funding sources, so that not only is it a complete roof renovation on all of those buildings, that campus style, school, but also the HVAC system. There are univents, I believe, that were back from the mid-90s, and they've been relying on those for the heating and cooling of Y High. That'll all be replaced in conjunction with this roof project, as well as they're looking at the lighting and doing a number of other things, trying to put thread some things together for the overall project itself.
what's the age of the school?
In the 1950s.
Yeah.
Yeah, be like mid-50s.
This seems like a lot of money. Seems like a lot of money. I was just wondering again, and we all hate to say that.
Well, it's a lot of square feet. That one story, as Brian said, that one story concept, is to your traditional schools with 2 stories. So square footage wise, your roof area is probably half at, say, a Bennett or something compared to that one story campus style Y High.
The cost of construction is certainly not getting any cheaper either, so it adds to it.
But, this is all county funding going for the roof.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, okay, we spend, and we know it's going to be at least $7 million. The county spends $7 million on a roof. Should the county maybe look at what our investment is on a renovation or a replacement? And granted, we know it's going to be multiples more, but I'm just wondering about what might be better for the long term. So I'm just throwing out there, I'm one person, so.
I would say that they've definitely look at those kinds of things when they go in and look at the systems of the school. They have the engineers that come through and make recommendations. School Building Commission certainly reviews those very, very closely and then makes those recommendations from there. Obviously, a project like Mardella that we know is north of $72 million in a much smaller school, and what's being done there. It definitely is a large school. It's a large project. But I am excited about the fact that they're able to take a number of funding sources to redo some things, not only just the roof, but other things within the school as well.
It was renovated in 1996, where I was.
It was renovated in 96, okay.
That's when air conditioning
That makes some
was put
sense
in.
there. That makes some sense, yeah, right. Are we having an investment?
So when do you think the next renovation will happen on that one particular school?
On Y High?
The one that was renovated in 96?
That's
But we're talking about Fruitland, but regardless.
right. So the renovation schedule is driven in large part by the Educational Facilities Master Plan, and as our staff look at the condition of various systems in the building, then they're ranked, scored, and the CIP is then developed based upon those rankings.
So as we do projects, those rankings change all the time because
Yeah.
it's based off of the facility condition. It's also based off of the quality of the facility, how large is the enrollment, what are the types of programs that each school, may need, depending on if it's an elementary, middle, or high, or whatever it may be. And then from there, as they go through and look at all the systems within the school, that will determine what the condition of the school is, and then also look at the programs, what the quality of the school is. Then all of that's combined, and then that's how our priorities are ranked in the capital improvement program or the plan.
And like you said, I was going to ask you what would be the next 2 or 3 schools in the priority list, but that always changes.
It always changes as we are going through and doing all these projects, whether they be HVAC projects at a number of our schools, roofing projects. That's going to change that priority.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a mammoth job for these guys, because then you got to try to also project where the enrollment's going to grow, and there's pockets of growth in the enrollment. And
That's right.
just look at Delmar, for example. That whole area is growing by leaps and bounds. That's our biggest elementary school. I don't know where the property is where we can expand that any further. I mean, it's just constantly looking at that.
And I saw the school discussed on social media last week, and there was discussion between what should be done between both counties.
Oh, for Delmar, yeah, that's always a topic because of the bi-state agreement. Yep.
Right.
I serve on planning and zoning, and here 3 or 4 months ago, they were talking about the development that's going behind Vernon Powell between there and Brown Road. And I asked a question about, did you get in touch with the school board? Did they have any issues? A lot of growth there, 370 some homes. And then we had something come up the last meeting or the meeting before. Large development's going to be a lot of. You all don't express any concerns to the planning and zoning, or when these large developments come along about how. I mean, I just heard a concern about Delmar.
I definitely have a concern.
Okay, all right.
We're not usually asked if we were, that's a great idea. Maybe we should be.
You've been asked.
It usually is.
Because
Yeah.
they asked you about that one, and you asked you about the next one, because they said
Right.
the school board had no problem with it. So
Right.
we were asked about those two.
That's right.
So, I mean, when you're talking about large developments coming in,
I don't know that I've been involved in any conversations
Yeah,
I'm
regarding
talking about the school
either of
board now.
those.
I'm talking about the school board, not administration. I mean, that's who I asked.
As school board, I can't recall anybody asking us about where the next development's going to go and what is it going to do to the schools. Not since I've been on. I mean, no one's asked me.
Many times communication occurs after the fact and saying that this is coming, and we find out, and then we inquire planning and zoning
Right.
what kind of community is it going to be, how many homes or units will it be. But that's the kind
I'm
of
getting mixed
information that we
messages, I
inquire.
guess, because they're saying the school has no problem with it. So,
You may be.
Who the school is.
yeah,
Yeah,
Well, that's Parsons Lake, isn't it?
it's
it is part of it. Yeah.
But that should have been approved many years ago
No,
for
that just came in
development.
front of the planning and zoning, Larry.
Well, this is the second burst of development there.
Sounds like it's on.
We'd certainly be open to any communication
Absolutely.
or
I
conversations
just thought
on
the
how to
school
improve that.
system should be
I agree.
concerned about
We are concerned,
Yeah,
but the information is
It's
not
a lot different
getting
than
to
somebody
us.
building a home out in the country on one lot and somebody
Agreed.
building
Right.
300 homes in a
Agreed.
development.
It sounds like that's part, that sounds like that's planning, on planning and zoning's checklist, right?
Pardon me?
It is on planning and zoning's checklist,
The context.
First it
which is, I
wasn't.
think, is where it needs to,
Yeah.
we need to know
Right.
where it starts.
Yeah.
There are multiple.
Until I brought it up, it wasn't.
I say there are multiple counties that have APFOs, the adequate public facility ordinances, which those are basically meant to do exactly that, to make sure that you have adequate public facilities. But it's kind of a different process, the way we have handled things here. But maybe that's something that should be maybe be better interplay, because obviously you want to
I
grow.
can't remember the last time that was discussed, AFPO.
I don't
Right.
want an APFO, to be clear.
If I could just offer this up from the city perspective, since I represent Fruitland too, because Fruitland doesn't have anything to do with the schools. When the developer comes in, it really doesn't come up to our board, our planning commission or anything. And we don't have that ordinance on adequate facilities, so.
Sounds like we could do better with the dialogue between all of us, right? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
that to Joe's point.
I think it makes perfect sense to have
have those conversations.
planning meetings.
Yep.
Yeah, but you have to have some, and I think you have to have something in place.
There should be a process.
Yeah, and I think from what Joe says, they have that in place. I don't know who their contact is, whether it's the superintendent or whether it's the board. I don't know.
It would go through planning and construction through Lisa Ashby and Kayla Campbell.
Okay. Okay. Well, very good. Next item we have is the Maryland Blueprint update. This is always in flux, right?
Sure. So Dr. Briggs sends his regards. He has been under the weather and is on the mend from that and was back today, but he did provide some information for me to review with the council regarding Blueprint. It is definitely changing and changing rapidly as we're gaining more information from not only MSDE, but more importantly, the new Accountability and Implementation Board from the governor's office regarding Blueprint and the things that are coming from that. As you remember, having provided this information in the past to the council, there are 5 main pillars of the Blueprint. They are early childhood education, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders or workforce, college and career readiness, including CTE, and then ensuring that we have the resources that we need to help all students be successful, and then lastly, governance and accountability. So regarding early childhood education, that is now coming more information as we are expanding pre-K. We've been working on that in Wicomico County now for a number of years under the previous superintendent, Dr. Hanlon, and we're continuing to do that. That is now going even further into pre-K 3 students. We have, I feel like as far as our county is, we are in the lead, close to the top around the state regarding what we provide for pre-K 4 students, but that is also expanding now into pre-K 3 students. We have almost 800 pre-K students, close to 700 pre-K 4 students, and then close to a little over 100 pre-K 3 students. So that is definitely an expanding area here in Wicomico County.
Do they have to qualify to be in the pre-K 3?
They are prioritized according to the household income. That's correct. So for pre-K 4 is more what we would call universal. Okay. It's open for, but it is still prioritized. But we are pretty much able to meet the needs of our community for pre-K 4. Pre-K 3 is different, and that'll be a growing area as we move forward. Continue to see that.
Does the Blueprint call for universal pre-K 4?
It does.
Okay.
That's important.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
When do you think the county will be ready?
So at this point, we're enrolling. I'm looking here to my right, but we are definitely in meeting the needs of where we are for enrollment with pre-K 4 students and offering that to our 4-year-olds around the community. Mm-hmm. As far as pre-K 3, like I said, we have a little over 100 students currently in the pre-K 3 program. Most of those students are coming from households of poverty, or they may be English language learners, or they may have some other area of need and support there. But as we grow that, the scale for the household income continues to increase. So currently it's at what they call 300% poverty level or below. That'll go to 300 to 600%. There's a whole scale where that will continue to grow the numbers of pre-K 3 students as we move forward over the next 10 years, roughly, of the Blueprint implementation plan. As far as high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, we have already met the 10% increase in pay for our teachers over the course of the last few years. And then over the course of the next few years, we have to get to a minimum starting salary of $60,000. Also, the state is providing for increased rigor of education licensure and teacher prep programs. So that is along those same lines. And then it's also looking to establish new statewide education career ladders to continually improve the professional development and professional practice of teachers as well. So even though salaries are increasing, the requirements for teachers as we move forward will continue to increase as well.
What would determine a higher starting salary than the 60,000 base?
National board certification is one area that will come with an increase in salary, and then continued education, also continue roles and responsibilities as far as that teacher, if they are a leader among teachers and providing some of the professional development that can help them to continue to go up the career.
How would you know that they were a leader before you give them offer a starting salary?
They first have to have that national board certification. And then once they get on the career ladder, they have to meet additional requirements that put them in those positions.
Not a bad starting salary.
That's right. It's definitely very competitive.
How did your bonus program go along with it?
It went well, very well received, and that was a part of a Grow Your Own initiative from the state with that grant that we were able to provide our teachers to help in recruiting and then also retaining. So that'll go through 3 installments, one at the beginning of the school year for those that were coming on board with us, one in the middle of the year for those that are staying with us, and then one at the end of the year.
I thought it went all the way through the system, not just teachers.
So it did.
Yeah.
It did, yes.
Yeah, I mean-
That's all employees, yes.
Yeah.
All full-time
He
employees.
says except for the bus drivers. Yeah.
All full-time employees.
Did they have to sign a contract taking this?
They sign a year contract, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And college and career readiness, as we know, we have a great CTE program, so that'll be additional funding and requirements to expand CTE as well as dual enrollment.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, so important. Any improvements on public-private partnerships, especially through CTE? I know you're building a house again, right? You haven't done that
Yes.
in a while. You've been doing dog houses as opposed to real houses, but you've got another
We
house.
continue that partnership.
Yeah, that's great.
For sure. And also, we're always looking for industry partners. The state of Maryland is looking towards not only CTE with their on-the-job training that we currently do, but also expanding in the area of what they call apprenticeships, where they can gain additional work experience. They do have some requirements that the employer would have to meet in order to be able to come on board with that, but we're always working through Brian Ashby out in the community to expand those.
Yeah. I noticed one of the automobile dealerships have set up their own kind of CTE program for training. Is that saying that we weren't advanced enough, or is it, what was the?
No, I think I'm not completely familiar, so I don't want to misspeak, but I would say that what they are able to provide at Pohanka in that program for adult learners is very similar to what we're providing for our own students in 11th and 12th grade at CTE.
Yeah, that's a nonprofit program for mainly targeted at, as Dr. Stauffer said, adults that have been incarcerated, and then they can get into the training program to become an auto mechanic.
What it said in the paper.
Yeah, the paper's not a.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
I figured it was for anybody that was interested. I didn't know it was just for inmates or whatever. But
No, I don't know that either, but I know it's mostly geared towards those that are out of high school.
I think Bill's right. I think it is for those that have been
It's called
incarcerated.
Vehicles for Change is the nonprofit.
The dual enrollment, Wicomico is doing dual enrollment with Warwick.
We have 3 partners: Warwick, Salisbury University, and UMES.
Okay, good, because I was going to ask, I saw one of the schools in Worcester County was partnering with Salisbury University. So
We have that partnership as well. We are continuing to grow the dual enrollment program. It is the goal of Blueprint over the course of the next 10 years that every student graduate college and/or career ready, which means that they should be either through some type of advanced high school program like dual enrollment or in a career technology education program.
do the students still have to take a separate test than the high school test to get the college credit?
So there are advanced placement courses
Right.
in our high schools that you can have, that some universities or colleges will accept the scores for in lieu of credit. And then also dual enrollment, they're actually getting the college credits at the institution, whether it be Warwick, Salisbury University, or UMES. They're completing those courses and getting those college credits.
And they have to attend in person.
They
then.
will have to attend in person.
But the advanced placement, they'll take a class like Biology 101, 121, and then have to take the college test.
That's right, the College Board AP test.
Okay.
And those classes are right in our high schools.
Good. It makes good sense for a student to take those courses for the credit.
And then ensuring resources for all students. As you know, Mrs. Miles is going to touch on this in the next agenda item, but we are continuing to grow in the areas of English language learners here in Wicomico County, students of poverty. That percentage is continuing to maintain and grow as well, and then also special education as those needs continue to grow. Blueprint provides for each of those different populations and the needs that we have. We haven't always been funded as a school system to meet the needs of those students, but this is additional funding that goes directly towards those students in meeting their unique learning needs. Any questions on Blueprint or where we are? I will say, last but not least, the timeline. We are currently, we have a steering committee for Blueprint in Wicomico County Public Schools that's currently meeting, and we also have work groups for each of these areas: early childhood education, high-performing workforce, college and career readiness, CTE, and then additional resources for students. So we have a work group for each of those areas of Blueprint, and they are currently meeting, and we are developing a plan. We're waiting on the final template from the Accountability and Implementation Board. We're expecting that in the next couple of weeks, and then over the course between now and March, we will be creating our own local implementation plan through those work groups. They're also those work groups have stakeholders from the community. For instance, some of our pre-K providers, daycares, are on the early childhood education work group. Those work groups will be helping us to write that plan that we ultimately will submit to the state later this spring.
You know, I thought I read something just in the past few days where some of the timetables have been pushed back.
So, without getting into too much detail, I will say that the timetables for some of Blueprint have been pushed back. So the plan that we will submit to the state will not be the full comprehensive 10-year plan. It will be a plan that we will be looking at locally in the next 1 to 2 years. So they have taken that large scope of what we call Blueprint over the implementation of that over 10 years and narrowed the focus a little bit so that we're going to first focus on turning into the state what we have to accomplish in the next 1 to 2 years.
Next item you have is the enrollment update.
As Mrs. Miles.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you again. So, all that we've been talking about and hearing about, our facilities, our staffing, our amazing programs, it's all based on and supportive of our students, and that boils down to enrollment. I can share with you that as of today, we have 15,037 students in Wicomico County Public Schools. That is a continued return in surpassing the most recent years. I can go back to 2019-20, not 1920, 2019-2020. We had 15,203. I saw that. 2020, 2021, we had our dip, 14,354. We started to come back a bit last year with 14,664, and I had to update this number to add 27 more students from last week when I presented to our Board of Education. Again, as of today, 15,037 students. As Dr. Stauffer mentioned earlier, when he was speaking of Pillar 4 or Priority 4, our special service groups, Our ELL, English Language Learner students, currently, as of today, 1,546 students being served, roughly 10% of our student body. For special education, 1,522 students being served. And keep in mind, those numbers, if I came back before you in a week, would probably be different and would very possibly see a difference that was increasing. So our schools are filling in a very good way. That is not, that is inclusive of all students in our Y3, pre-K 3 through 12th grade. And we are seeing the increases across the board in terms of which grade levels have the students coming and/or returning.
On the 15,000, how many of those have been added with the pre-K 4? Is this full-time enrollment?
These are students who are currently attending in our full-time programs.
Okay, so are the pre-K considered full-time or not?
They are counted in FTE.
They are.
Yes, so those are full-day programs.
What number is that?
118 as of yesterday. I pulled that number yesterday.
You had it right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 3.
Y3,
Y3.
pre-K 3.
All right, 4 is like, didn't you say it's like
672.
672, yeah.
So that's where we come up with, as Dr. Stauffer mentioned, the roughly 800 in our pre-K
Okay.
program.
Missed it.
Because
So-
those two components together form our pre-K program.
Gotcha.
So my concerns about development are founded due to the fact that your enrollment's going down.
No, enrollment's going up.
Yeah, but you said it had gone up since, wait a minute, I was confused. I wrote the numbers down wrong. It had gone up. I'm sorry.
Yes, our number currently is higher than pre-COVID. And I don't always want to use COVID as a measuring stick, but time-wise, I think we all can relate to that.
Exactly.
We have a higher enrollment now than we did before the pandemic
Yeah, like
came into our lives.
pre-9/11, right? We always set these dates.
Okay.
But we know that that was a concern for both us as well as the community, our parents, and also the council. Obviously, due to COVID, enrollment numbers went down, but
We
we're
lost
here-
a lot of students.
We did. We're here to let you know that we've
Yeah.
gotten those students
Yes,
back,
gotten back.
and now then some.
And some.
We're above
Yeah.
those enrollment numbers of where we used to be.
So with that number of students, it makes me wonder what the list of employees look like, teachers and other staff. I know that hiring is difficult, but how many employees does the board have right now? Do you know?
We currently have close to 1,400 classroom teachers. And then overall, this is including bus drivers, contractual employees, substitutes, whatever it may be, around 3,000 total employees.
I always knew the number was around 1,500 teachers, but I didn't realize it was up to like 3,000.
Again, that includes everyone, custodians,
Yeah.
all contractual employees, full-time employees,
Needed
our support
employees.
staff, clerical staff, everybody.
Appreciate you always being so willing to come in and for the quarterly meetings. It means a lot to us to be able to get these kind of updates. I think you are always so well prepared. It helps, I think.
It's my team, honestly.
Yeah,
And the support that we get from our board, but they do a
I
great
believe
job.
that's true, and it instills so much more confidence in the community as far as the job that you all are doing. So we appreciate you taking the time to come in and the great work you all are doing. So,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
It's good to see you all. Thank
I did bring, just for your information, I can give this to Laura, but we have just a job description for our grant specialists and then our grant procedure manual, which is posted online.
Great.
Just for your reference, so
Great.
we'll leave that
Perfect.
with you.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Next item on the agenda is, excuse me, first thing now, let's, if I could, do we have, okay, we have majority. Entertain a motion to adjourn from the open work session to reconvene in legislative session? Second? Second.
Second.
Second. I have a motion second.
Don't we have another work session?
Well, this is, it's the resolution on the bond award.
Right, but
Steve Miller here.
we got another work session before that.
Where did we put it in? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had it before that.
All right, Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, come on up. Yeah, I'm sorry. God, I thought we had more time. Too many updates on these agendas. Too many updates. All right, we'll withdraw the motion second if you. Steve, still in open work session. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Glad to have you.
Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. My name's Steve Miller. I'm the Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism for the county. Thank you for giving me the chance to be here, Mr. President. Thank you for including this on the work session on short notice. So I'm here to request a signature from the Council President on an engagement letter that would engage the Maryland Stadium Authority on future capital improvement projects at Purdue Stadium. As you may know, over the last couple of years, Major League Baseball has changed the way they're structured in terms of the relationships with the minor league affiliates. That resulted in many communities losing their minor league franchises in the last couple of years. We were fortunate not to be one of those. But one of the things that Major League Baseball also did was that they imposed certain facility requirements on both teams and jurisdictions that have minor league affiliates to meet new Major League Baseball standards in order to keep your affiliation. Now, to the state's credit, knowing that this was in the works, to the state's credit, the state of Maryland has been very proactive in trying to help the teams that are located in Maryland to address these issues. This past legislative session, they passed House Bill 897. That's the Sports Entertainment Facilities Bill, which established about a $200 million pot of money for sport facility, entertainment facility type improvements. The Stadium Authority last week released a policy document that kind of outlined the procedure as to how you apply for technical and financial assistance through that bill. And I will tell you we're in a very good position in that they defined as tied to this bill, there are different types of sports entertainment facilities. There's many types of sports facilities, but the Stadium Authority defined the first level priority, which is minor league baseball stadiums that have a major league affiliation. So, for example, we're affiliated with the Orioles. And I'm told, and it's outlined in their policies, that that the Stadium Authority is going to look at priority level 1 projects first before they consider, I'm sorry, I keep coming in and out here, but they're going to look at priority level 1 before they consider priority level 2 or 3 projects. So we are one of 3 that qualify in that first level priority. So we're in a very good position to seek help of the stadium and the state to help fund the improvements and ultimately keep the team here and affiliated with the Orioles. So the first step in that process, and the reason I'm here today, is the Stadium Authority has asked that we send an official letter of engagement that's signed by both the executive and legislative branch to engage the Stadium Authority. From that point, they would set up site visits with us. We would go through the stadium evaluation, what needs to be done, what can be included, what will it cost, and then we would go through that process of applying for funds and ultimately making those improvements. So the funding does not come with match. We don't know what the number will be. That's part of a process. But the funding that's been established does not require a match. So we're again in a very good position to get state help, and this is the beginning of that process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Well, I don't have a question, but I do want to point out that we are very fortunate to have the Delmarva Shorebirds in Wicomico County, so I can support anything to keep them here.
And
Agreed.
you and Chris Bitters do an excellent job in making sure that place stays here. So we appreciate that. And this is an example of that you're staying on top of it. We certainly would want to help you and get this letter out.
Yeah, and I think Delegate Anderton's still here, and the entire General Assembly give credit to the state for creating this mechanism where we can help address this, because this would have put jurisdictions in a very tough spot. I know across the country, many states are not doing what Maryland's doing. I think we're ahead of the game, and we're very fortunate that there's this fund that we can tap into.
And we could have easily lost our franchise when they did the reorganization, 2 years ago?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, council is okay with the letter?
Yes.
We're good. All right, Steve, that's wonderful.
Very good. I'll leave it with Ms. Hurley. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it.
You may want to copy it, I don't know. You can sit down, thanks. At this time, we'll adjourn from an open work session and reconvene in a legislative session. Motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. So we now reconvene in legislative session as Wicomico County Council for October 18th, 2022, legislative session 2022-22. First item on the agenda, only item left on the agenda, is a resolution number 140, 2022. Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 140-2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
This is a bond award resolution. And if you could state your names for us, Joe, good to have you here.
Talk, I think, typically.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Good to be here, council members. Joe Mason with Davenport and Company, financial advisor to Wicomico County.
Pam Olin, Finance Director. So if I may, we have two sets of bonds that we went to the market for this morning. We have a tax exempt series. We had 9 bidders in that series, ranging from 3.9% up to 4.1% and change. I'm not going to go, it's like 5 decimal places. So, the winning bid was Robert W. Baird and Company at 3.929, and that is slightly under the estimate that we were expecting. So we got a little bit less than where, or our interest rate is a little bit less than where we were expecting it to be. The second, the taxable series, which is basically projects being done at the airport, we had 4 bidders ranging from 5.31 up to 5.43. Raymond James won at the 5.31, a little bit higher than what we were expecting. But based on what Charles and I put in the budget for fiscal '23, we're still under the budgeted number that we were expecting to have. So we had estimated that the whole series would be about 5%. So the fact that the larger part of the series is under 4, we should be good with our numbers for the fiscal year. These are 20-year bonds. The first, and I highlighted it, now I've buried it somewhere. We can call these or basically refund them in November of 2030 if interest rates come down.
So we can't do that until 2030.
Correct. So we have to pay the interest rate that we have on these bonds through 2030. So it, like all of our other bonds, this year we did not come to you with anything for refunding because nothing was financially feasible for us to refund based on the interest rates. The market volatility is, again, we beat our estimate on the tax exempt. We were a little bit higher than our estimate on the taxable, and that's just what's happening in the market right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
To follow up on your observation, Mr. President, you can, in fact, potentially, if interest rates were to drop considerably, you could refund these bonds in advance of the November 30th call date. You would just set up an escrow account to fund the payments until the call date, and then you can refund any maturities on or after 11/1/31. But again, you need interest rates to cooperate in your favor. So
You just pay them off also, right?
you can cash defease them, or for some reason the county were to receive a windfall of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
So our recommendation is that council accept this resolution and allow us to fund the capital projects as anticipated in the bonding.
Questions?
I just want to point out one thing. The legislative day number is blank on the copy that you have. We will insert that to be 22.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hurley. All those in favor of Resolution 140, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
And I will say one more thing. These will close on November 1st. So we will have funding for them after November 1st.
Thank you. Entertain a motion from council to adjourn.
I'd like to first,
Go ahead, Joe.
I didn't bring it up when we were talking about the ball stadium.
Yep.
I didn't want to, we were doing our other work and fully in support of the ball stadium, what they do. But the council needs to know, and the citizens need to know, that the Delmarva Shorebirds are making political contributions to politicians. They should not be doing that. So I don't know whether we need to try to draw up some kind of legislation to rectify that problem or not. But,
Well, I think first what we ought to do is just send her an email asking them what the circumstances were, just so we make sure everything, we know exactly what it is and what happened.
Political contribution is a political contribution. I don't know
I
what
like
kind
to
of
know who was in,
circumstance.
I think it's important to know who was in,
Well, who did it,
what the
right.
circumstances were. so
Yeah,
that, you know,
yeah.
If we're gonna have a work session, develop some type of legislation, doesn't hurt to have every single
Right,
aspect.
right. Well, we can find out, and I
You
think,
just get an email out, find out what,
ask Laura if we can do something to probably move legislation forward. Anybody we fund or partially fund, we should not be making political contributions. Now, I understand we don't write them a check. We don't write Delmarva Shorebirds a check for anything, so we don't fund them. But it's still,
Not a good look, yeah.
pardon me?
Yeah, it's still not a good look, is
No,
what you're.
no, it's not.
we
Thank
do
you,
make-
Josh. Yeah.
we do make capital
Stadium.
investments.
We make capital investments to the stadium, but we don't make, I just checked with our finance director, we do not write a check to the Delmarva Shorebirds as an organization. We make,
All right.
yeah.
Yes, so the operator of the stadium is Seventh Inning Stretch,
Yeah,
and
right.
that's who the county does business with.
Yeah,
So a check would go to them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it certainly doesn't look good that, we're supporting something or trying to support something that's writing, political contributions.
Okay.
Thank you.
We could start that.
So now you need a motion to adjourn. I'll make that motion.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.